This video is sponsored by Sleep Chief, who have a new collection dropping at 9 a.m. PST or noon EST as this video goes up. It is their Lunar Shadow collection, which includes a deck box, a playmat, binder, storage box, metal dice, and others that we can see here on the screen as well. So make sure to check it out. You can also check out the other items they have on their website too. And if you do want to get anything, make sure to use my coupon code the Eggman at checkout for additional 5% off. So make sure to check it out and enjoy the video. Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we've got a top 16 breakdown for the Core TCG Pasadena Regionals that happened this weekend. It finished just about a couple hours ago. It's pretty late into Saturday, maybe early Sunday, but we are here with this breakdown. I'm really excited to kind of go over for it, right? This is the first event that we're covering of the kind of big four from this weekend, since this is like the start of OP10 post-restriction list, and there's just like a lot of data to go through. And honestly, I think this is a really, really good format. So again, very excited to go over it. So a couple of things though before we get started. First, if you guys are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe. It does mean a lot, and it does help a lot for this channel as well. Also, if you guys want any of the deck lists for this event and many others, you can find them on my website, Eggman Events, which is linked in the description. And then also, I was lucky enough to do the live stream and host it here on my YouTube with Zell as well. So super fun time. Really happy we were able to do it. And if you guys want to see the live stream, it is linked in the description and also linked on this page so you guys can see any of the matches from this weekend. And honestly, we had a lot of great matches. There are a lot of close calls, I think, that are happening. And there's just so many unique matchups that just naturally occur due to how many leaders are viable, especially in this first week where people are still trying to figure it out. So make sure to check it out if you haven't. I think it's a great time. And thanks again to Zell for being my co-commentator, and again, Core for letting us do it. It was a really good time. So jumping on into this, though, into the top 16, we did have 4 copies of Purple Luffy, 3 copies of Teach, 3 copies of Shanks, 1 Nami, who ended up winning the event, 1 Dofi, 1 Eustass Captain Kid, 1 Zoro, 1 Bonney, and 1 copy of Lim. So again, a pretty good spread for this. I think we have, what, 8, 9 different leaders into a top 16, which is absurd, right? We normally don't see this many. And we do have, like, you know, a somewhat big split of the Luffy taking 25% of the top 16. But honestly, I don't think that's even that bad, right? I think we do have some variance, but we also kind of see that Shanks, Blackbeard, and Purple Luffy are, if not the strongest leaders in this game, they're the ones people are on the most. We can see the leader breakdown as well. Shoutouts to Chippy for helping me get this too. But we also do have 111 Shanks, 57 Teach, 54 copies of Monkey.D.Luffy, and then Bonney just kind of rounding out the 50% there. We also did have 31 copies of Zoro, 26 copies of Lucci, 23 Dofi, 20 Usopp, 20 Smoker, and then 124 other leaders, which I can almost guarantee there are over a dozen additional leaders from there. These were just, you know, under 20 or less representations for it. But I do think it's really remarkable to see like how much of the meta was Shanks, right? It was about 20%, a little bit more than it, and then it just drops drastically from there, right? 111 Shanks to then 57 of Teach and 54 Luffy, and then 46 Bonney, all around the 50 player mark, right? And that's like half as much as like where Shanks is. So I do, you know, very clearly see Shanks a lot of the time. I think it was the safe pick for this weekend. I think it does well into a lot of matchups. I do think that it's a deck that we'll talk about in a little bit, but you know, just the fact that it does have a lot of good matchups means that it's the safety pick, right? This was a really big weekend for this format. A lot of people don't really know what it looks like yet, and I think because of that, you know, just choose the deck that makes sense from the matchup charts, and I think that's what a lot of people did. So you guys can get your own data from there or get your own conclusions from it, but I did think it was interesting to see how much is Shanks, and even though like Shanks didn't do like as well as maybe some other leaders, it's still pretty much converted, right? We did have 3 in the top 16, which is approximately in ratio for how many brought the deck to. So I think that's interesting. But we do have a top 16, and we also do have some unique top 32 decks. So these are decks that went X2 and they were some unique leaders. So that's going to include a Katakuri, a Rob Lucci, and Enel, a Edward.Newgate, as well as a Reiju. So we're going to go over those as well. But I do want to go over the topping leader for each one of these decks. But one more thing before we get started, I do want to say it's really interesting. If we look at this top 8, we have 7 different leaders. We have Nami, Purple Luffy twice, and then Dofi, Eustass Kid, Zoro, Bonney, and Teach as well. So I do think that's pretty remarkable. And then we did have 3 Shanks, but none of them went X1. They are all X2 finishes for the deck, which I think just kind of goes to the nature where Shanks can beat everything, but it also feels like it can lose against a lot of things. You're very inconsistent at times with how many bricks you have to run, and you don't really have that many consistency tools for the deck. So I think that is something that's really interesting for this build specifically with this meta specifically with Shanks as well. I don't think it's an unheard of for the deck to go X1 or X0, but I think like the fact that, you know, all three of these went X2 and are able to get into top 16 does, you know, just another data point to maybe look at across a couple other events. But we will be going into the first place list, which is UnlikelyHero, our Adam's version of Nami. And if you've seen that name before, because Adam won the last Pasadena regional that Core TCG hosted as well. Different format. Also played Nami, but I also do think it's really remarkable to see the adaptations that he did into this format too, right? Like we do see just a lot of different kind of tech cards that I normally don't see. The primarily one is the Nojiko. I know a lot of people have been looking into this card due to the blue and yellow Nami that comes out of OP11. Since it does work with it, you just have to be named Nami, but this can be great at getting rid of 5 costs. I think 5 costs are kind of the default kind of card to remove in this meta right now. There's a lot of good 5 costs running around, including like the 5 cost Green Smoker. I think the 5-drop Rush Luffy's been really good. Bonnie's been making a lot of 5 drops, and so any card that can kind of efficiently handle 5 costs like that I think is great. So I think Nojiko is a good add for this meta right now. We also do have the Brick Fist as well, so this can be helpful for getting the slowdown on some matchups too. I think this could be really good against specifically some builds of like Dofi, even though they're very good at building boards still. This can also be flexible at bouncing your own Kaya to your hand, so then you can again play it to draw 2. You kind of have to go like -2 in hand with playing Kaya again, and there. So I guess it's only like -1, but being able to spend 3 Dawn to draw 2 cards is a little bit inefficient. But if you need to do it, you can. And sometimes the trigger off a life is great. We are running a couple of other bounce cards. We're playing like the Snake Dance as we normally see for this deck too, and then also 1 copy of the Gravity Blade to help you remove some larger targets. This does get rid of 2 6 costs, and I would not be expecting to see this card against most matchups. Sometimes this can also hit something out of life. It does hit a 5 or less, which again is a kind of milestone for removal in this meta right now, and I think it's a really interesting choice. So I think Adam's just a really great player, one of the best Nami players I know, if not the best at this point with the back-to-back, and especially in this meta where I feel so many decks are leaning more aggressive than usual, right? Doflamingo's still around, Zoro's still around, Shanks is still can be aggressive if built like that. Purple Luffy is still very prominent, as we've seen with 4 copies in the top 16, and it's Nami was not on my radar for potentially top, like it was like maybe topping. I wasn't expecting it to win it, but with Adam at the helm, I'm not that surprised. So it's going to be curious to see if Nami's able to continue in this format. It can also just be a case where this is a pretty efficient deck that even if we are on day 1 of a format, you just kind of do your own thing and you do get that advantage. And again, we'll have to see if it continues to top in this format too. But this is a build here from Adam. Congratulations for their back-to-back first place with the Nami leader. The next up, we've got Egoist with their copy of the Purple Luffy, and again, this deck just kind of got better by default. I think in this format, Rob Lucci and Doflamingo were 2 of its toughest matchups, and even though those cards aren't gone, right, I think those leaders are still being played, and we're going to look at a Dofi list and a Rob Lucci list later. Them being not as present, I think, is good for Luffy particularly. I also do think that we can have a good matchup into Teach potentially, even though we don't get our on plays as much in that deck, as well as Shanks can be good too, since they don't always have a great way to answer our Luffy Taro plays. So if you go first, I think Purple Luffy has a good matchup into Shanks because of that, and there's just a lot of pressure that you can apply for it. But the other kind of key card that you might have seen already that we're seeing in this list here by Egoist is the 5-drop Magellan. So this is an older card, but still a goodie. On play Dawn -1, you get to unramp your opponent 1 Dawn, which can really set them back on some plays, which most decks I think aren't expecting it. But a deck like Shanks, if they're at 6 Dawn and they're expecting to go to 8 Dawn to be able to play silvers, this can just stop that. Like legitimately, they can't do anything about it. But then also has this opponent's turn when this character is KO'd, your opponent returns 2 Dawn from their field to their Dawn deck. So unless your opponent's at 10 Dawn, this can be really tricky for them to remove this card in the mid to late game at times, just because they need that Dawn to be able to get to their full 10 every turn, and so this can be a way to get some protection because they know they don't want to remove it. So it's only opponent's turn, so if you hit like a pistol out of life and you have that 6k on board to remove it, you don't lose the Dawn. So there are ways to interact with it defensively, I suppose, but I think this is a good tech pick, and there are some decks that are just kind of dependent on getting to that late game. Though I do think some more aggressive builds of like Zoro, this is just kind of a bit of a dud card. Zoro doesn't really care about losing one Dawn as much, and it's a bit bold, I feel like, running it at 4 copies, but when we have Gum Gum Giant to get rid of extra copies in our hand, we really don't care. So otherwise, I think this is a pretty standard list of Purple Luffy. I think the deck is really good right now. Again, this is a deck that really didn't change that much from OP09, and when you didn't lose any cards on the restriction list and you know that you have pretty much an efficient build for what this leader looks like, I think you have a lot of advantages, especially going into this day 1 format that we had. So again, this is Egoist list, and congratulations for their finish with the Purple Luffy. The next up, we've got Doflamingo. So this is Asa's laptop's version of the deck here, and Dofi did have to adapt through this meta for 2 big reasons. One, we don't have Jinbei, which does mean we do have 4 open spots into our deck a lot of the time, but it is something that we do miss. I think we've seen this in some matchups, including some that we saw this weekend, where you really do need that extra body from Jinbei sometimes. Just the fact that it can represent, an additional 1-2 cards out of hand because you're just attacking 4K with it, and they likely can't remove all cards in your board. I think that's something that Doflamingo got a lot of advantage for, closing out games in previous formats, and just can't do that without Jinbei in this current format. So that does make it a little bit tougher, but we do kind of have some ways to even it out. One, most people I see are running 3 to 4 copies of Jozu. I think it was like the 2 to 3 spot for a lot of people in previous formats. So this does feel extra good, I think, again, when so many people are kind of prioritizing these high value 5 drops that get value the turn after they played, again, like the Smoker and the Red Luffy. This just prevents all that value from happening. It's very obnoxious. This card is, I feel like, extra good in this format in particular, and I highly recommend running it at 4 copies in most builds of Doflamingo. And then we also do have some room for some tech cards. We've got 3 copies of Red Rock, primarily for Eustass, Captain Kidd, but also for something like 10-drop-Teach. To be able to just get the removal for that, I think, is really great. Then also we have the Gravity Blade Raging Tiger, super good against also Teach. Being able to get rid of 2 copies of a Burgess is great for that deck, but there are some other ways. Again, when you need to interact with 5 drops, interacting with 6 drops is even better, and getting that double removal can get you just a lot of advantage back. So I think Dofi's in a good spot still. I'm not surprised that it was able to top this event and go X1. I think it's a deck that's going to continue to maybe rise back up after the next couple of weeks when people realize that it's still pretty viable in this format without Jinbei. And I don't think the build's going to really change that much. I think there are some room for some tech options, and I've seen some builds run more of like some late game cards too, but I think this is still a great build with a great player. And congratulations to Asa's laptop for their finish with the Donquixote Doflamingo. The next up, we've got the newest leader, or one of the newest leaders from OP10. It is the yellow Eustass Captain Kidd here, and this is a pretty unique leader. This is a end of your turn. You may turn 1 card from the top of your life face up, and then if you do that, set up to one of your supernova type characters with a cost of 3 to 8 active, and that character gains blocker until the end of your opponent's next turn. So it does mean you get like a little bit of knowledge of what your next life is. It's public knowledge, but you do appreciate that too. The fact that you're able to establish a blocker every turn that generally is going to be bigger than any attacks, like it's just like a free block every turn, I think that's really great. And then also you are kind of like defensive control. Like the hot and cold with this deck has been really interesting to see more and more people play, right? You see this deck and you're like, oh, Basil Hawkins, this card says trash a life. We see this 8-drop kid, this card trashes a life. We must be like an aggressive leaning burn deck. And what I've found, and I've been seeing over the last couple of weeks, is that most people are playing the deck, yes, but they're running it kind of more of like this value kind of chip deck that you really kind of depend on finding a lot of copies of your 7-drop Law. I think this card is fantastic in this deck. It does let you heal 1, and it also heals you face down, which is great. And then it turns itself into a 7/9 blocker all by itself. Like you can have 0 cards in your life area and 0 cards on your board. You play this, you heal 1, and then you get to turn this into a blocker. That's hard for most decks to interact outside of anything that can play Hody. And then you just kind of got out of 2 attacks with 1 card that technically costs 6 Dawn because you put a Dawn underneath your leader with it. So really great card. There's not like super great triggers you get to do with this. I think the best one is Basil Hawkins to be able to draw 2 and trash 1. We also, this Bonney is not a supernova. I know other copies of Bonney are, so it's a little unfortunate, but this is still just a good trash 2 and draw 1. It also, you do get some kind of benefit, like if you know that you're going to play 8-drop Kid and you have this card on the board, you can do something clever where you put a Dawn underneath it, and then with the other 8 Dawn you're able to do that, and you get that plus card advantage. So being able to have this like 3 dropout I think is interesting. I haven't really seen that tech before. I really wish this was a supernova. I think that would help out the deck a lot without breaking it. I know it's in the Egghead arc, I get it, I understand, but most Bonnies in the game say supernova, so it's weird to not see it in a yellow version of it for this deck, even though this was printed way before Eustass Kid was out. So other than that, I think this deck is cool. I do like the addition of the vanillas. Mostly what this is for is that they're just big bodies that are able to really press a lot of advantage. I think that's something that also helps you specifically against the decks of like Shanks. Shanks is really good at removing 6Ks, right, with a combination of either the Ben Beckman being able to use the it's on play, or even the Silvers being able to use its on play as well, get the -3 and get rid of a 3K or less. Having a big old 7K means that they have to use an Otama or some kind of additional reduction, or they're not getting their removal with it. Same kind of thing with Cavendish. It's just even harder to remove, and being able to have both of these, especially on like our intermediate turns before we get to either a Law or a Kid, I think is really helpful. So last thing I'll mention is we do have the Ace. This is kind of turns the deck into like an Enel deck where they can start bullying you, but then this card is able to play. You get to heal 1, you get to attack with it, and then assumedly you still have like a large supernova card on your board. You get to reconvert one of those into a blocker because you just healed a card, so your life is face down. So I might have to do some more testing with this deck. I think this is a very good finish here from, again, Mr. Mexicant for their trouble, and I'm really interested to see if Eustass Captain Kid can get a little bit more of a hold on this meta with Rob Lucci not being around as much, and also Doflamingo being a little bit less powered. I think this could be a little bit of a sleeper right now, and I'm very interested to see how it does for the next couple of weeks too. So this again is a list from Mr. Mexicant, and congratulations to their finish with the yellow Eustass Captain Kid. Then next up, we've got Zoro. So we've been seeing a lot of Zoro here, I think in North America, and a lot of my testing's been kind of around it. And this is the build here from Phillip Vu. And primarily what I noticed from this one compared to others is that this is not running the animal build, which I think a lot of people are currently on. And I do think the animal build is good, and I think it is strong. I do think it's also a bit inconsistent because you have to find your 3-dot chopper, right? And the more you find, or if you find it off the top 5 of your deck with your Shut Up and Come With Me event, you're doing pretty good. It feels very good. But when you're not doing that, it's the opposite. It just feels really, really terrible. So this is more of kind of like the bread and butter and kind of like old-fashioned way to play Zoro, where we do play just a bunch of rush cards. We just have a lot of ways to play a lot of 1-drops and be able to buff them. We're playing Curly to Dawn, a card that was a menace in this card game for quite a while, since this is able to find a 1-drop. So that means it can find some 2Ks with Makino, Tony Chopper Blocker, a Magura, which is essentially also just a Makino, or the Nami, or Buggy. So being able to play this, find another search card, and then be able to find a booster for them too, I think is really good. We do run a couple events, not that many. Like, we do expect to kind of miss with Buggy quite often since we're only running 10, but if we do get the free advantage of a Kick Course, Radical Beam, Jambé, or Mulgun, we are pretty happy about it. And I'm sure there's just some situations even late game where you're like, if I don't find Mulgun, I'm not winning this. So our Jambé, so just even having like a late game way to find that, I think is really great. Also, all of these events are Straw Hat events too, so Nami can find all of them too. And then lastly, we are adding some new cards from the set with the Sanji, which again is just such a good 3-drop. Being able to pressure for 6K, or 7K with Dawn underneath leader is great. The fact that it draws you a card on KO, which most people will do or be pressured to do, because again, for this is just a 7K in Zoro. It's just insane. And then we also do have the Luffy, which just lets you do 2 7K swings, or 6K 7K swing on 6 very easy, right? You attack with it, you give the Dawn to Zoro, and then it's already putting the Dawn underneath yourself, which is just fantastic. So I think that's a really good card. We've been seeing a lot of it, and it's part of the reason why I feel like 5-drop removal is very good right now, because this card if you leave it unchecked, like it just gets more and more value and helps extend plays the longer it stays on board. So anyways, this is a build here from Phillip. It's been interesting to see this build, kind of a blast from the past, but I have been seeing it get a little bit more popular on some testing circles, and it's going to be interesting too to see where people kind of land with Zoro towards the end of it too. But this is Phillip's build. Congratulations for their finish with Zoro. The next up we've got Bonney. So this is the build here from their TCG Plus nickname is Nicky Goldman's biggest fan. It wasn't Nicky, and I only say that just because it's the first thing you read. If you continue reading the username, it's Nicky Goldman's biggest fan. So they are playing the Bonney though, and it's been pretty interesting to see kind of what people's opinions are for Bonney rather in this format. And the biggest reason is that we did get some really great support cards for green in general. No surprise here, it's the Tashigi just being a great like defensive card. You're not even like that afraid to play it on like 3 or 4 Dawn if you're expected to play either like the Smoker or even a Bonney or Cavendish on the next turn. That's really helpful. Smoker's been fantastic in this meta too, especially with Bonney. If you play it on curve at 5 Dawn, you're able to play it, use its effect to set up to one of your Dawn is active, and then you can use your leader effect next turn. So you didn't even, you were able to play this for 4, and then if your opponent lets this stay around, you just get your leader effect for free every turn, which is again pretty absurd. So we've been seeing that just be very strong. Bonney also has access to the best finisher in the game right now in Hody Jones, which is really helpful for us. We do have a single copy of the Donquixote Roronoa, which I do like this card. On release of Roronoa in OP4, there were like 2 good 5-drops and they didn't really have a lot of synergy with each other, and it was really tough to warrant playing this card at all, right? But right now when we're in set 10, there's just so many good green 5-drops. Like we are running 4 different one at 12 copies. Carrot is just fantastic. It slows down a lot of decks, and the fact that this is able to stun a 7-drop or lower is absurd. There's so many cards that this hits. We also have the Jewelry Bonney being able to stun things and Dawn specifically. I do like that card a lot. Cavendish, which I don't think needs much explanation, and then also the Smoker as seen. So this deck also is great at bunkering up with Eustass Captain Kidd. We're also playing 4 whole copies of Shanks, which is the maximum amount of Shanks that we can run at this card number, but man, that does feel a lot. I normally don't see 4 copies of that. So that is something in particular I think that this deck has access to. This effect is very good for the record, being able to KO something, especially in a deck that's just, your opponent's always going to have rested cards on their board if you're playing Bonney. And so that's something that's really helpful. And the 11k is a lot of power. Like it means that you have to, like 11k and 12k are essentially the same in a lot of scenarios, because it needs pretty much the same amount of cards from your opponent's hand to respect how big this attack is. So I think this is just a great card. I didn't think it was a 4 of great card, but it worked out. And other than that, which is kind of the stuff we've been looking at. Most people are just playing the Supernova package. I know in the past we've been kind of seeing some 50-50 with Bonney, as well as the Roronoa package. And I could also see that coming back as well if people want to. Though I just think that playing a 5-drop on curve is so important for Bonney. And also, because of that, I think a lot of people are targeting 5-drops that Bonney could be in trouble with. So that's why I think Rosie being able to play a 5-drop and get the protection is really good. I think playing Tashigi early, and if they don't answer it, you do just to get to play your 5-drop for free, which is really nice. And my biggest issue is that none of this stuff is really searchable, and Bonney still has like some consistency issues, because outside of our 1-drop Bonney finding other supernovas, which generally just kind of boils down to 8-drop Kid, maybe mid to late game, if we need to kind of switch our strategy to just bunkering up with this, there's not that many good tools for like the late game that Bonney can find. But I think this deck is still good in this format. I'm not super surprised that I was able to go X1. And congratulations to, again, Nicky Goldman's biggest fan for their finish with Bonney. The next up, we've got Teach. So this is Vincent's version of Teach. And this is the last deck in the top 8, not even halfway through the 8 decks that we're talking about. They're like I think we're talking about like, 14 decks today? This is not even close to halfway, but we do have the copy of Teach from, again, Vincent. This is, and I mean this in the nicest way, probably one of the most generic ways to build Teach, I think, in this format. Teach is not known for having an access to a wide amount of cards right now. There have been some builds where they're more of like, I would say, like lottery based or casino based, where they are focused on running more cards with trigger, just because we are a 5 life leader, and being able to run just like additional copies like Finger Pistol out of life feels so good in a lot of scenarios. Being able to play Black Hole in some scenarios makes sense, but also just being able to play like I bid 500 million berries, that just gets rid of a 6-drop without KOing it, which is absurd in this game. So that helps out a lot. I think that could be a different build, but generally speaking, this is what people I think are playing with this deck. There might be some ratios differences. We have the new card of the 4-drop Kuzan, 5-drop Kuzan, which is insane for some consistency cards, and also like if you just play it early, it's just like a better like Burgess, because you then get to convert into it later. Shiryu's been very obnoxious from a lot of my testing too. This just says activate main. If your leader has the Blackbeard Pirates type and this character is played on this turn, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a base cost of 3 or less. So there are just a lot of good 3-drops like Sanji right now. You still get the card draw, but I think Shiryu will, you removing it with Shiryu is worth the trade of your opponent drawing a card, but you as Blackbeard not losing a card for having to defend the Sanji attack and then having to remove it again later. So I think that's helpful. Also really good tool against Zoro if they're running more of the Chopper build, because again, those cards can be just very tricky to handle. So other than that, I think the Teach is understood what the deck does. I think it is a very pilot-centered deck, and one that you really have to know the matchups and your opponent's ins and outs in a lot of ways. And I think it's a very big accomplishment for topping with Teach, especially since I know a lot of people are targeting it more in this format, and there is more of an aggressive lean, but I think this is a really big accomplishment, and congratulations to Vincent again for their finish with Teach. Next up, we've got Lim. So this is the build here from Thomas. So Thomas did go X1 with Lim, which I think is already an accomplishment. Unfortunately 9th place, so just bubbled out of a serial, but a really fantastic run. And honestly, like you'll have to believe me when I say this, I do like Lim as a deck, and because I like Lim as a deck, I was not very confident in its skill for it, and I've been clearly proven wrong from an initial standpoint from this event, and also we're going to see some other events later in this week, but it did go undefeated 10-0 during a Swiss run in the UK regionals. They're playing Top Cut for that, so we're going to see how ends in it, but Fletchy was able to get that, which I think is quite an accomplishment, and I think I maybe was underrating Lim, definitely underrating Lim, but I do think that it is I still don't know how I feel about it. I need to do some more testing with it, to be honest. Maybe that just fixes it, but you do have to win your dice rolls. I feel like with this deck a lot of the time, you are really consistent if you are able to go first and find your new 1-drop Lim. I think that helps out a lot of matchups and lets you just be more aggressive. I know a lot of people are really experimenting with their top end with their deck. I really want to play 9-cost Zoro in this deck, but I think it's like all or nothing. Either it is the main way to build this deck is that you hyper focus on playing Zoro as fast as possible and finding it as fast as possible, or you just do nothing. You just instead not play the Zoro, and instead you just play out these 5-drops effectively. I do know that there's been more and more people on these Sakazukis. Again, this is a card that can remove a cost of 5 or less on your opponent's board. It doesn't even have to be rested. The biggest issue with this card is that 1, it doesn't have counter, and 2, it is a 6 cost, so you either have to play it out for 6 generically, or you just have to, essentially that's all you can do, right? You can't use your leader effect to play this out early. So that is a little bit expensive for this deck that likes to play 3s and 5s, but it is generally worth it. And I think there's a lot of formats, especially since, again, Smoker is a big issue. 5-drop Luffy's been very common. And I think there's just some great ways for this to get value, especially if your opponent's not expecting it. So other than that, our top end is 2 copies of Adeo, which I've just never liked this card. I'll be honest. Like, I've been testing a lot of Lim, and I want to like this card, and I think 2 is fine, but it just doesn't feel like it does a lot, right? Like, sure, you get to... I feel like if it untapped 4 Dawn, which maybe is crazy. Maybe that's a crazy amount of Dawn, but if you play this on curve at 9, cool. You've got 3 Dawn open. You can use your leader effect to play another 5-drop, but then you don't get its defensive effect, right? I just feel like there's like a little bit of synergy missing from it. And like a 9-drop 9K is not like terrible power, but it just doesn't... I just feel like it's just okay in what it does. So I think running at 2 copies, if you like, is fine. It's a searchable kind of high-end card, but it does just kind of sit there, which is kind of upsetting. I think Shanks is just like the better high-end card for the same amount of Dawn. Just the fact that you get to remove something and then you're 11k rested, but that generally doesn't matter. Most decks aren't going to be able to attack and pressure into it, so I think that's fine. And the hard removal, like especially ramping into the hard removal, I think gets a lot of value as well. So I think the deck is good. I do definitely need to try some more Lim. I think the last thing is that we are playing the Scratch Mana Poo as our additional 2k. I did talk to Thomas about it, and he was on some other stuff to try to fill out this void. But the biggest issue I think with this deck is you do kind of need some good 1-drops to play early and get some value. I know a lot of people play Purple Law, which you almost have a consistent amount of targets with how many Straw Hats there are within the Odyssey type as well. But I think being able to play a Poo and being able to, one, have a 2k, which is great late game as well, but being able to rest something with cost of 2 or less, that just sometimes randomly comes up and then lets your leader like attack into something too. So I think this is a fine card for the deck, and it's been really cool to see see Lim be able to get a top for this one. So again, this is the build here from Thomas, and congratulations for their finish with Lim. And then this is our last unique X1 deck that we have, and then we're going into X2 super quick. Of all the decks that we went over for it, in the top 16, these Shanks was the only deck in the top 16 that's unique that got X2. I think maybe that's the best way to say it. And we got 3 of them. They were back to back to back, as in we did have our first X2 was Airborn with Shanks, and we had Diego as well as DrUwu with their builds with it. And we're just going to look at all 3 pretty quickly, but honestly, a lot of Shanks decks are just kind of devolving into like a pile of good red cards, which is maybe a little over reductive. I do think there's a lot of decision points for way people build this. I think most people are playing searchers one way or the other, 1-drops. So for the build here from Airborn, we are seeing the 1-drop Uta. We also do see Nami from the build here from Diego, and then also DrUwu went back to the Uta. So I think that's fine. I think it's a concession you kind of have to make in some scenarios. You just need, I feel like you just need some kind of consistency, right? Like you have just so much inconsistency with this deck at so many times. So being able to even play out an Uta, maybe have something to do with our Dawn if we don't find any additional cards, can be good. We are only playing 3 copies of Shanks, which I think is fine if we do have a searchable Uta with it too. I've also kind of just decided that the best card for this deck is the 8-drop Silvers. If you see this card on curve and you're not playing against Teach, you are likely winning your game. And then also, if you see 2 of them, you are very likely winning your game. Most decks, I think, in this format are very susceptible to the removal and pressure this card achieves. And then just being able to remove something, but also kind of prevent other attacks from happening. The permanent minus effect until the end of your opponent's next turn synergizes really well with their leader effect too. And it's just such a shame that currently this card is not searchable. We do have a way with the new songs in EBO2 to search it if we want to, but Silvers is just the best card in this deck that we can't search, which is just a bit of a shame. So I do think that we can kind of maximize our copies with it. We can also draw some cards off Sanji if we need to, but red just doesn't really have that many draw cards right now, I feel, which again makes it very tricky for you to be able to find Silvers at a good time, or really most other cards in this deck, right? Like we can play Nami, we can use it to help find us a Sanji or a Chopper to maybe play on curve. Even 5-drop Luffy, we're playing both here from Diego's build to the new 5-drop 6k and the old reliable one from Star Deck 1. But then again, we're just a pile of good red cards, right? Beckman's good, Silver's good. We're playing 2 copies of Dragon, which I don't think is too surprising. We're playing our 10 costs as well as the removal of 10 cost Shanks and the Goldie Roger, which I think this card is probably worth putting out 1 copy in any red deck that makes sense for it. I do think Shanks is better in a lot of scenarios, but the fact that I feel like so many people are putting me down to 0, or they aren't respecting the fact that if I do go to 0, I can just Roger for win in so many scenarios that I think that's just something, it's just worth the 1 copy for right now, which again, this card's not searchable. I don't believe so, but that means that you do have to just kind of find it at the right time. But otherwise, I think Shanks is good. I do really like the addition of Monet here for Diego's build. The fact that this can just be played on turn 2 and just sit here in kind of either one, force your opponent to answer it is really good, but then it can kind of extend your plays. Even the turn you play it, Technically, you pay 2 Dawn to get a +3 into any character card, since you're giving your leader 2 Dawn and then you're giving the -1 to a character. So if your opponent's kind of doing some Dawn math with how much math you're doing, how much Dawn you have left, they can think that they can get out of your attacks with how much Dawn you have left. But Monet can really foil those plans, right? If they expect, oh, they're just going to be able to do one more 7k with leader to try to get rid of my my Weevil, I have a 2k in hand I can use. You can then instead slam a Monet, be able to make your leader a 7k still, but make the Weevil a 5k, and now they're giving you 2 cards to save the Weevil when they expected to only spend 1. So that I think pops up a lot and in some matchups, and being able to like this is like a plus whenever you're trying to trade for board, which I think Shanks is doing very often in their early games. So other than that, I think that this is a really good deck right now. It is having some consistency issues, and I think, again, it's not really overcoming the amount of people who are playing it versus the amount of people who are topping with it right now. But we'll have to see if there's any kind of adaptation in the next couple weeks. I do kind of expect Zoro or Shanks to just do well by default for these next couple weeks, because it is not a bad deck. It just sometimes has some conditions of a bad deck, like bricking at sometimes. But also, I think a lot of people, it's a comfort pick right now, and there's just honestly a lot of people on it in general. So it's going to be interesting to see like what Shanks looks like right now towards the beginning of the format compared to where it's going to look like at the end of it. But I think it's still a very strong deck, and big congratulations to all of our Shanks players on it as well. And it's going to be interesting again to see what this changes. And I don't think I went over DrUwu's build as much, but this one's probably one of the more standard builds I've seen. Very focused on the red hair pirates. We do have like a couple of the new tech cards, but we're not playing 3-cost Sanji in the build. We're just playing double blockers with Chopper and Rue on 4. We've got the Marco, which we don't have a lot of protection with since we aren't playing the Red Hawk, and then our top end of 2 Newgate, 4 copies of Silver, 2 Dragons, 3 Shanks, 1 extra Shanks, and then the 10-drop Goldie Roger. So again, I think most Shanks builds are you're able to kind of tinker with it in the way you want, which I think is cool. And there's also just more aggressive builds, way different builds of Shanks. Well, we've seen the animal package before. Again, I think the Straw Hat build, the more aggressive, like with 3-drop Rush Zoro I've seen, can be good. And this is going to be a high variety. Like, part of the reason Shanks is good too is that you don't know exactly, your opponent doesn't always know what they're facing, and that can give you the edge too. So anyways, again, these are the builds from Airborn, Diego, DrUwu. Congratulations for their X2 with Shanks. And then we're kind of wrapping it up. We're going into our 17th to 32 range, and weirdly enough, 17th place and 32nd place both had unique decks, so we are going to go over both of them. But I do want to go over some unique leaders that were able to get top 32 with an X2 finish. We have 5 of them, and we're going to start here with the build of Katakuri from Nobu. So this is just a build of Katakuri. I don't know how to say it otherwise, right? Katakuri came out in OP03. 10-drop Mom came out with it. This card is a menace. Some people still shudder at the fact that this card lets you heal 1 and then also deals 1 damage to their opponent. Kind of unheard of. This card is very bad against Teach because they will never ever not discard a card at 10 Dawn. So that is a little bit scary. That your kind of boss monster is just invalidated against one of the best decks in the format right now. But we still are just attacking 7k every turn, which some decks just really don't know what to do about that, which is strong. We do have our consistency pieces. We have Parasparrow. We've got 4 copies of Kiko Unojo. The Nami being able to be a way to KO something and potentially get a cycle, get rid of a trigger in hand, I think is really helpful. We've got our 2Ks. We've got our 7-drop Linlin, our 8-drop, and that's about it, right? We can maybe play the new Punk Hazard, the Damned Punk event as well if we want to get some additional removal. We're just going for good old Thunderbolt, which I don't think is a bad choice. The fact that it does have a trigger to get rid of a 5 or less is good. And again, 5 costs are the ones we want to remove in this format, so this is great. And I don't really have much else. I've said it, I think, pretty often and probably in this video already, but when we're in such a day 1 format, which is kind of rare for North America, we want to be able to use the deck that we know is at peak efficiency. And Katakuri's been, maybe the efficiency isn't super high or the strength isn't super high, but it's been consistently good. This is the best way to build it because it's been the build that's stood through time. and that just sometimes gets there. So this is the build here again from Nobu. Congratulations for their X2 finish with Katakuri, and again 17th place, just bubbling out. Big shame, but I am very happy for your top 32 finish there. Next up, we've got the Rob Lucci. So this is the build from Squad of Turtles. And most people, I think, wrote off Rob Lucci on the announcement of the restriction list, including myself. My mind, which I think a lot of other people were thinking too, was that Ice Age and Moria were clearly the two best cards in our deck, right? Ice Age let us just get a free removal potential against any card in the game, essentially. And Gecko Moria just let you get a lot of value, be able to stick an 8/9, and also in conjunction with Ice Age, remove pretty much any card in the game. So with both those gone, it makes sense where Rob Lucci would not be able to exist as a deck as it had previously. But I think a lot of people have been putting time and work into a new way of Rob Lucci, and it's one where I really kind of respect the playstyle a little bit more. So you're still taking advantage of your loops and your combos. Rebecca still is a really good card because you can get like a Brook, which is just removal in this deck, or a Spandine from your trash. So either of those was great. So Rebecca, Spandine, Rob Lucci is part of the reason that Gecko Moria I think was really strong in this deck. And you still get half of it. You get the mini version, and that still just gets the advantage you need. You can also get Hina as well to get the -4, which then can get something to range from either a Rob Lucci or Who's play, which is really good. I do also like the addition of Kaido in this deck. This is fantastic for removing cards, and I think it helps even out the Teach matchup too. Teach, I think, is one of the traditionally harder matchups for Rob Lucci compared to where it was with the Ice Age and Moria build. Moria just never ever did anything in the deck, right? But now with this kind of build, we have a lot of ways to kind of tempo out with like these 4-drop 6Ks, or these 5-drop 6Ks, or 6-drop 6Ks. But then also with additions of cards like Jack and Kaido, like we used to play a lot more copies of Jack, but 3 copies of Kaido, we're going to see it pretty often. And that's really great into, I think, a lot of matchups right now currently. So that's great. I do also respect like the additional of just how much cost reduction cards we have in the deck. We have 4 copies of Uta. We do have 3 copies of Laboon, which I think people are putting more and more copies of these into their Rob Lucci decks. And then we have the old reliable 4-drop Kuzan, which just gets that card draw. Being able to kind of force a -4K when attacking is great, and you can get a lot of advantage because of that. So I don't have much more to say. I do think Rob Lucci's in an okay spot right now. Definitely a little bit lower than when it was in OP09, but it still does good, which I think is amazing, and just kind of shows the strength of this leader in general. Being able to get that cost reduction on a leader attack with no Dawn investment is really good. We've seen this before with Sakazuki, and being able to fill up her trash is great too. So only thing that I've noticed specifically is that sometimes you don't get 10 cards into your trash as quickly as you've had previously. Your trash feels way more like a resource in this current meta compared to previous ones, which I think is good, but it can mean that you're kind of stuck from some plays too. So other than that, this is again the build here from Squadofturtles, and congratulations for their finish with Lucci. The next up, we've got Enel. So this is Melon's version of the deck, and this was one I was not expecting to get an X2 finish in an event this size. It is a deck that I think people are, like Rob Lucci, are underrating the success that you can have with it. We don't really have any new cards. We really just kind of lost Kingdom Come with the restriction list, and kind of was not necessarily a pillar for the deck, but did help you just have an ace in the hole for a lot of just like big bodies, right? The fact that you can use that card to get rid of 10-drop Teach, I think was amazing, and we don't have a way to replace that kind of removal potential, unfortunately. So we are playing more of like the stall version, or I'd say like the not hand control, but like the starve one. We've got like the 4-drop Kuzan. This lets you get rid of a 3 or less, and then also makes your opponent trash a card from hand, which is pretty good. We do also have traditionally Gidatsu, but I'm actually kind of surprised to not see it. Luffy does help us get some removal though, with also gets around the protection effect from a or the on-play prevention from Rob Lucci, which I think is good. We also do have like a little bit more rush stuff too. So if instead, honestly, I don't know. I don't like Kuzan normally says that this is a starve deck, but 7-drop Enel says that we're not a starve deck usually, but I don't know. I'm really confused on Enel right now. If it won, how consistent it is right now, and what's the best way to build it. I think this is a great way to still get kind of the same feel for Enel, but it is it's kind of in a lost spot in my mind. I think they're needs to maybe be like an adjustment. I do like the add of the 8-drop kid because that does give us urgency, and being able to trash a card from our opponent's life without giving them the card helps us. But I don't know, it's in a weird spot. Like, right, we lost Ice Age, so that means that we can play our 10 drops, 9 drops, 8 drops with a little bit more knowledge that they're likely going to stay, which I think is good. But we also just feel like we can get prevented from doing our late game stuff too. So I don't know. I'm gonna have to do some more testing with it now. I am sure that this segment was not very enlightening outside of, I didn't expect Enel to the top, and I wasn't expecting it to be pretty similar to what the builds looked like before the restriction list. And I think that's interesting to see it was able to get there. But this is the build again from Melon. Congratulations for their finish with Enel. And the next up, we've got another old reliable. I feel like I've said old reliable like 10 times this video, but it's the Edward.Newgate. This is AAAA's version of the deck here, and it is a straw hat build aggressive version of the Newgate, and I think this is very valuable in this current format. It does put down a lot of pressure. I think that there's just red straw hats have been stronger than ever with the new Star Deck 21 that came out. I do like the addition of the 3-drop Sanji. This just being like a way to apply 6k pressure without having to be afraid of the additional value. Like, you don't care if this gets KO'd because they're likely going to be able to do that anyways, and you get that card draw, which is helpful. We do also play the Tony Chopper. We're playing the 4-drop Zoro, which honestly, I'm a big fan of this card. I think this is a card that can be really helpful in a lot of matchups. The fact that it's a rush card that can gain protection and then play out a better 5/6, especially since that 5/6 can be Portuguese the Ace, which just lets us have like an even higher protection card. I think it's just good value. I like the idea of it, and I think it works. We also have Ace, we have 8-drop Dragon, and then we just have a bunch of events to keep us healthy. But we're not supposed to be like the bunker up 9-cost Newgate dropping. I think there's just like 9-drop Newgate just felt like kind of the worst it's ever been. The fact that like Newgate gets negated by Teach, we can't like play it in that matchup. The fact that additionally, like I think most decks can kind of get around you bunkering up too. So I understand like not running it in this build, especially since we're more straw hat focused, which I don't expect many people to run more of like the Whitebeard focused ones anymore. I think straw hat is likely the way, and there's just, again, so many good red straw hat cards right now. It's really hard not to play the deck. So other than that, I'm a big fan of Newgate right now. I think it can be strong. I'm not too surprised. We also had another one go X2 and undefeated. So it's cool to see it's still getting some wins here and there. Again, I think this is the week for it to be able to have some chances to do well. I'll be curious to see if we're able to see like another top or bubble out with it in the next couple weeks too. But it's cool to see another just aggressive red deck being able to take advantage of the new cards. So again, this is AAAA's build of the Edward.Newgate. Congratulations for their top 32. And to wrap it up in 32nd place, we do have Edwin's build of the Reiju. And we got two pretty like support cards for this deck. I think the most clear one is the Vinsmoke Sanji. On play, if your leader includes Germa, which we do have, look at the top 5 cards of our deck, reveal up to 1 card including Germa, add it to your hand, then place the rest of the bottom of your deck in any order. So just a consistency search card is fantastic, right? This can also find just any card including Germa, so that's pretty much your entire deck. It also means you can find your Kingdom of Germa. So there are so many games where I think Reiju loses because they don't find their stage and they hard mulligan for it. So Sanji being able to help you do that with an additional 5 search is really good. And if not, you're able to find either like your Reijus, which can let you get that stage even later in the game. So I think that's really helpful. The other kind of important card for us is the Foxy. Just another 2k. It has activate May. You can trash this character. If the number of Dawn cards in your field is equal to or less than your opponent's, you get to draw a card. So sometimes you just need to draw one. This is also can be some scenarios where you play it off of Porsche. You need the draw one and you just cycle it with Foxy, since also it can find the Foxy. Generally speaking, you're playing Chopper, I think, a lot of the time, because we are going to be behind on Dawn. So a blocker that also gets their Dawn back is really valuable too. and we're just focusing on like the value from Ichis and Reijus, which I think is fine as well. So other than that, I think that this is a pretty strong deck. Yeah, I know a lot of people believe in it right now, and getting a top 32 finish with the next two run, I think is really impressive. So I don't have much more to say. I know there's a lot of people who are committing to Reiju right now. We know that we're getting more support in the future with it in OP11, so I think that makes sense for anyone who is interested in it. Though I do fear that there might be some better blue and purple leader sometime in the future in OP11 that might overshadow this one. But other than that, this is the build here from Edwin, and congratulations for their finish with Reiju. But that's going to be it for me. I feel like I've been talking a lot today. This is the same day as of the Pasadena Regional, so I'm pretty beat. So sorry if I was a little bit lower energy than usual, but I'm very excited for this format. I think, again, there's so many decks that are viable, so many different things to play, and I'm really looking forward to see how this meta shapes up. So that's going to be it for me. Again, make sure to check out the website if you want to see any of the deck list. We're going to continue to update the more events that happen for the English version, UK, Greece, and Virginia, if and when I get that data. And make sure to check out the live stream too if you haven't already. So that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.